You ever just stop for a second, look around, and this massive question just hits you? Why is there, well, anything? I don't mean how it all started, but why is there a universe at all instead of just nothing? It's probably the biggest question you can ask, and it gets right to the very heart of what reality is.
So, where do you even start with a question that big? Well, there's this classic philosophical argument that tries to build an answer, one logical step at a time. It's called the argument from contingency. And honestly, it's a pretty mind bending way to think about the entire architecture of existence. Okay, so let's start by just looking at the world around us. Pick anything, your desk, the sky, a person walking by. You notice pretty fast that everything is connected, right? It seems like everything depends on something else to be here. Nothing just poofs into existence all by itself.
I mean, think about it for a second. The phone you're holding exists because a factory put it together. That tree outside, it exists because a seed sprouted. The city we're in exists because people actually planned it and built it. Everything you see and touch has a cause. Its existence is kind of handed to it by something else.
And there's a perfect philosophical word for this: contingent. If something is contingent, it just means its existence isn't a given. It could have easily not existed. You listening to this, you're contingent. This screen is contingent. The planet Earth is contingent. The existence of all these things depends completely on other factors.
Now, this is where it starts to get really interesting. Let's try to trace one of these dependencies backward. So a tree comes from a seed, simple enough. But where did that seed come from? Well, a parent tree. And where did that parent tree come from? Another seed before that. All of a sudden, you're looking at this long, long chain of causes, just stretching back and back and back. And right there, that's a huge logical problem. If every single link in that chain is contingent, if each one only exists because of the one before it, then what's holding up the entire chain? So the first thought a lot of people have is, well, maybe the chain just goes back forever, an infinite series of causes. And on the surface, that sounds like it could work, right? Just an endless line of causes and effects with no real starting point. But here's the crucial insight. An infinite chain of dependent things doesn't actually solve the problem. In fact, it is the problem. Think of it like this. Say you want to borrow a book. The person you ask says, sure, but I have to borrow it from my friend first. Okay, but that friend has to borrow it from their friend, and that friend has to borrow it from another friend, and so on forever. Do you ever get the book? No way. An infinite line of borrowers can't just magic a book into existence. In the same way, an infinite chain of things that depend on something else for their existence doesn't explain how existence itself got into the game. It just passes the buck, forever. So if that infinite chain is a logical dead end, there has to be another option. There must be something that isn't dependent on anything else, something that's like a stable foundation for that whole wobbly chain. And this is where the argument introduces the idea of a necessary being. Now, unlike literally everything else we've talked about, a necessary being doesn't get its existence from somewhere else. Its very nature is to exist. It's self-sustaining. It's the kind of thing that just couldn't not exist. And this chart lays out the difference perfectly. On the left, you've got your contingent things. Their existence is borrowed, passed down the line. But on the right, you have the necessary being. Its existence isn't borrowed. It's fundamental to what it is. It's its own cause. To go back to that book analogy, this is the one person at the very beginning of the line who actually owns the book and can start lending it out. So, with this idea of a necessary source in our back pocket, we can finally put all the pieces together and see how it gives us a complete picture of existence, one that doesn't just fall apart logically. So instead of that endless, unstable chain of why, we now have a solid anchor. This necessary, self-sustaining source is the ultimate foundation. Existence can actually flow from this source, which allows the whole universe of contingent things to pop into being. The chain finally has a beginning. The question of why finally has an answer. And this quote really boils the whole argument down to its essence. If everything depends on something else, there must be something that depends on nothing. It's a conclusion you arrive at not by looking through a telescope, but just by following the logic, step by step. If dependence is real, then ultimate independence has to be real too. And so, this whole argument leaves us right here, on the doorstep of this incredible idea, a being whose very nature is to exist, something that doesn't need a cause, that doesn't need permission to be here, it just is. What would it even mean for something to be its own reason for being? Now that is something worth thinking about.